This week, we give our first impressions of the 2022 Lexus NX. We discuss the pros and cons of Hertz purchasing 100,000 Tesla Model 3s as rental cars. And with the weather getting colder, how long do you need to warm up your car before you hit the road? All of that and more next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Alex Nizick.
And I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
So in the news this week was an announcement from really Hertz rental car that they were going to purchase 100,000 Tesla Model 3s for their rental fleet. So Hertz and a lot of rental fleets struggled during the pandemic and actually declared bankruptcy. So maybe this is an effort to kind of recreate the rental fleet. As I see it, there's a lot of pros and potential cons to this endeavor. So, Ryan, do you see benefits or do you see risks with Tesla Model 3s in the rental fleet?
So I think there's, like you said, pros and cons to this. I mean, the pros, I think this is exciting for someone who has never driven a Tesla, is curious about a Tesla, maybe can't afford a Tesla, as a chance to drive one, right, and experience it. And within that, they may discover the pros and cons of owning one of these cars, right? Something we talk about often here is range anxiety, and it's not the convenience of a regular gasoline or internal combustion engine. You can just go to a gas station and refill it in 5 minutes, and off you go. A Tesla, you have to charge it. And even in a supercharger, you're still got to spend 40, 50 minutes, depending on charge times, or longer than that, right? If you're not at a supercharger. Some of the stuff, getting back to the range anxiety, some of the stuff that we've discovered is, and if you're in a colder environment or it's nighttime or it's raining, you start using all these amenities in the car, the heat, the wipers, heated seats, stuff like that. That claimed range you thought you took off, you had when you took off, might start disappearing real quick. And the trip you had planned is dwindling away, right? I mean, I potentially see people just getting stranded in these things because they might not understand. You have only 300 miles or so, whatever you took off with, but it might actually be a little less than that, depending.
Alex, you see benefits, risks, pros, cons?
Sure. Yeah, I think, Ryan, like what you said, maybe this is part of the growing pains of EVs becoming more adopted, and this gets it into more people's hands, and hopefully not too many people get stranded along the way, but it, I think, ultimately is a good thing for allowing people to experience it and just it becoming more of a mainstream thing. What I do wonder about, though, is people who own EVs, I think, typically have kind of a lay of the land of where chargers are around them, near their house or near where they work, maybe. Whereas if you're going to a new place and you need to rent a car, you probably don't have that understanding of the area where all the chargers are. So you're going to have to take maybe a little more time to do that. And at least when I've utilized rental cars, it kind of fills that gap where I know I'm going to need to be traveling further distances from the airport or wherever I'm staying, and an Uber or taxi won't do. So you're going to be putting some miles on, and you tend to pay a pretty hefty fee if you don't refill the fuel on a rental car before you return it. And for me, I'm like on my way to the airport and I'm like, oh no, I got to refill this thing, and I do it last minute. You got to plan a little bit more with an EV to charge it before you give it back. So you can't quite just save it to the last second like you might with a gas car. So just some extra planning and considerations.
That's an interesting thought, though, because that, depending on how they situate this, that might be part of the deal. Is you can bring it back empty. It sits there and charges while the next person gets in a different Tesla that's been sitting there charging. So maybe that's part of, that could be a pro. I'm not sure. And I will add, I mean, I'm going to assume that these would be, lower level Model 3s without all the crazy self-driving stuff, because I know most people, the first thing they ask me about a Tesla is, does it actually drive itself? Because that's what people think about, is a Tesla drives itself, and people, you might find some people doing some wacky stuff trying to drive these cars that they're not familiar with. I think Hertz needs to make it very clear that, or the limitations of these vehicles when they give them to people.
Yeah, so I'm right with you, Ryan, on the cons. not even so much of autopilot or something like that, but you think of the Model 3, just the normal operation of the car. All of it's in that screen, and it's a pretty steep learning curve. Now you're in an area you don't know well, you're renting a car you don't know well, and you're trying to manage all of that while potentially navigating an area you're not familiar with. I think that's riskier even than driving a Model 3 and getting used to all the operation on your own commute or on familiar roads. So I agree with you there, even, again, beyond autopilot. I think the pro is, though, this opportunity and it goes beyond Teslas. If there were other electric vehicle options in rental fleets as an opportunity to try these, or, you're in a city where you're not even really going that far and you can rely on some charging infrastructure, I think it's a great thing for people to be able to experience. We just had our Consumer Reports annual meeting last week, and there was a ton of questions about EVs, and they said, what's your last takeaway? And I said, try them. Before you dismiss the technology of an electric vehicle, try it, because a lot of them are great vehicles. Forget they're electric vehicles. They're great vehicles. So this is, to me, a great opportunity. But I do think people will need to, as you say, Alex, plan their route, plan how far they're going, take a little time before you pull out of that rental lot to make sure you know how to operate everything. Can you imagine if it was a Model S with its yoke? And they're pulling out of the rental lot. So, yeah.
Well, right now, you rent a car, and my experience with renting a car, they just throw you the keys and you're on your way. There might need to be a little tutorial, But.
And you're right. Maybe Hertz needs to train their staff a little bit in the operation of a Model 3 or anything else. Yeah. So, yeah. Very interesting, though. It's almost like a recreation of the rental fleet almost. Is that the new test drive where you can go experience it a little longer? We'll see. So very cool. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is we are coming into Halloween week. It's Halloween week. And last year, COVID restrictions really limited what there were Halloween parties. A lot of kids and families chose not to go door to door. So I think people will be anxious to get out there and do some trick-or-treating, obviously in a safe manner. But Halloween night can be a risky night, both for people and your car. So Alex, I'm going to go to you first. What are some key tips, and we have content on both of these things, for getting around safely on Halloween night, particularly if you're driving?
Number one is you should always be vigilant while you're driving, but just to the nth degree on Halloween night. I think you're quoted as saying, Jen, it's the perfect storm, right? It's dark out, first of all, tons of pedestrians around, and then now it's, little kids that are harder to see to begin with, and they're in strange costumes, and it's just a perfect storm, as you said. And I think there's some data from the Journal of American Medical Association that says that on Halloween night, it's your pedestrian fatality risk is 43% higher than average just on that one night. So, the risk is real. But yeah, so on top of staying vigilant, just take down the speed, drive slowly, especially through neighborhoods. Keep your eye out for kids. You should never drink and drive, but that's even of the utmost importance on that night. And yeah, all those things. And just, be mindful of the children, right? When there's one, there's probably more following. So if you see a small child,
and they're all hopped up on candy, so they're running around like lunatics.
Yeah, they're having fun, so they're not really watching for cars. It's your job. Be extra vigilant.
Yeah, they're definitely distracted. One of the things for the kids that I was thinking is, people, you think about their costumes. If you're driving door to door, and this can happen, in New England here, we've had it snowing on Halloween night. So sometimes people opt to drive their kids. And one of the things we have in the story is, before you put them in their wings and their halos and their muscle suits, do they have to get into a car seat that way? So we were saying, think about the costume if you're thinking about driving, because can they even get safely into their car seat and be super conspicuous? Get all the glow sticks and all of that make it clear to anybody driving that these kids are out there. There's also risk to your car. Ryan, we think of, I know it's a tradition. Maybe we live out here in the country, but to egg cars, what are some protections for your car?
Sorry, I'm still laughing because I'm trying to picture someone putting a mini SpongeBob in a car seat.
And they're square.
Yeah, your cars are probably the least safe. There's always those people out there doing this innocent but can be damaging acts to your vehicles. The first thing, if you can park your car in the garage, by all means, get it in the garage. Get it out of reach of anyone. Right? If it's not and it's outside, any car, you should have a good coat of wax on it. At any, whether you park it inside or not, a good coat of wax protects the finish. It allows you to wash it easier. But if you do get hit, just clean them off right away. Like that, a good coat of wax for all year round on any car is a very good idea.
Yeah. Those silly treaters, or tricksters, I should say, tricksters. Get your hose and your spray bottle ready for your eggs and your pumpkins and everything. So yeah. So yes, hopefully people are able to get out and enjoy a fun Halloween and a safe Halloween.
I was going to ask if either of you have ever had an egg thrown at your car. It's not fun.
Oh. No, and it sounds. I have, Alex, and it sounds like an explosion when it hits.
It does, and
oh my gosh.
I've had it thrown at the window. And then it drips down and gets between the door and the window. And then, that's even worse because then it's just stuck in the window track and it takes forever to actually get that out.
So before we depart from the Halloween theme, we'll do our own little trick or treat. What do you guys see as some of the greatest treats or tricks from what we're seeing in the automotive world lately? Ryan, what's your greatest treat?
This is an obvious one. If you work here at the track, we have a rented BMW M3, the newest generation, and I'm a BMW guy from way back. I had BMWs, and M3 was always a dream car. And I got to drive it over the weekend. I drove it all over the place, and I had a blast. So that was a nice little treat. Trick, right now, I'm trying to buy tires for this year's ultra high performance tire program. With all the shipping delays and issues with COVID, affecting the shipping and stuff. Trying to buy tires is a nightmare right now. I just can't get my hands on stuff. There's back ordered, there's this, it's that, and it's been a real trick.
So that's for our listeners. If you need tires, don't take it for granted. Shop now, right, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's already getting difficult. Trust me, I've been struggling.
And Alex, any tricks and treats?
Yeah, my answers are actually pretty similar to Ryan. So for the treat, I chose the Chevy Z06 Corvette that they just showed, I think yesterday as of recording this, and that thing just looks so awesome. The base C8 Corvette is already quite an amazing machine, and then you just add all the Z06 specialty stuff on top and that flat plane crank V8. I'm excited to even hear one if we get the fortune to. Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
I like when either Joe or Ryan do excels, or you, Alex, now are doing excels with that Z06 on the track. It sounds like a jet's taken. It's the coolest.
You hear it going down the hole. Yeah, it's awesome. Great. And then for trick, again, not quite the tires, but in a similar vein. So we keep trying to buy our new Ford Bronco, but it keeps getting delayed. So I'm a little upset by that because I'm so excited to drive the new Bronco. And I feel like, I see the schedule just keep going and going and going. So hopefully it shows up soon. But
I've seen a few on the road and I get so excited, and I know we were having trouble getting ours. And it's like such a bummer.
Yeah. But eventually, and we'll be happy to have it.
I think my treat is that I get to go back. We've done kind of a few more people are returning to the track. I am back at the track a couple days a week, and I gotta be honest, as much as I have gotten used to working from home mainly, I so enjoy being at work. It's just so much more efficient, and I miss the people around me. Ryan and I are next door, so I'm really, really happy to be there. And my latest trick is actually one I just realized this week, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, is the gear selector world. Just when I think they can't recreate it any different way, I get in a vehicle and it's different yet again. How many different ways can you trick us with gear selectors? So that is my trick for Halloween.
I'm with you on that.
Goodness gracious. So that leads me, before we talk about it, are from the track. So we're going to talk about, including its gear selector, our first impressions of the 2022 Lexus NX. So we rented two from Lexus, a plug-in hybrid electric and a turbocharged for. Alex, I'm going to let you kind of run down where the NX fits, what's different for the 2022 redesign, etc.
So this is a compact luxury SUV from Lexus. So I know we talked ahead of time, kind of struggle a little bit with this category, right? Because sometimes you can get better value with, a more highly equipped but lesser expensive car. But either way, this is one of Lexus's most popular models. It's only second to the slightly larger RX crossover. And this redesign marks the second generation for it. And I think when you look at them, it's a pretty modest redesign as far as, the visual changes. You might actually have trouble telling the two apart, but that being said, it's totally new, and it actually now shares the global platform with the RAV4 and the Camry and the Highlander, so it's on the same, nice architecture that a lot of these Toyota and Lexus models are on. And there's now 4 powertrains to choose from. So you mentioned the two that we got to experience. That's the plug-in hybrid. That's actually very similar to the RAV4 Prime that we tested. Then there's the turbo model that's supposed to be a little more sporty. Then there's a regular hybrid, and then a base model, just naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. So quite a few options, and I think that makes a lot of sense for this because they sell so many, so it gives even more, there's something for everybody, basically, if you're in this segment. What I'm most excited to talk about and hear everybody's thoughts on are the new infotainment system in this. So Lexus has kind of been plagued with this like touchpad mouse controller thing for a long time now. And this NX marks the introduction of a whole new ground-up redesign of their infotainment and control structure inside the car. So it's totally new, and I think we'll get into it more, but there's some great things about it. There's some less great things about it, but first impression is that it's definitely an improvement over what they've had before.
Yeah. Ryan, you like the NX redesign?
I do. I actually... I mean, I like the last NX. We do struggle with this size and this class of cars just because it's fairly small, but it's really nice, obviously. But that brings the price tag up. And there's you can get a better value, let's say, on another vehicle. But driving it's fantastic to drive. I thought it was it felt quite nimble. Both powertrains are great. I mean, the 2.4 turbo is plenty peppy. It's shifted real nice. The plug-in hybrid. It's a Toyota hybrid, so it's already pretty high on my list for hybrids in general. I mean, it's just very smooth. I got in it. I got about 38 miles on just electric on the charge, and then it will kick into its regular hybrid mode, which I thought was great. And it is a smaller car inside. I mean, you're a little hemmed in. The driver position is good, but it's snug. I mean, I'm 6'2" and I'm a decent sized person, so I'm in there fine, I'm comfortable, but it's not a roomy vehicle by any means. I was mostly pleased with the touchscreen. They went to a touchscreen. They got rid of the mouse. They beat that one too long. I mean, they kept changing it, and it just wasn't getting. It's just not intuitive the way it was. This is a nice big touchscreen. It's easy to reach. I thought it was laid out pretty well. I didn't have too many major issues. It's a few little things, but I think you would get the hang of it over time. If you own the vehicle. But it was a breath of fresh air to see that. I will touch on it. I know Jen's going to touch on it, but they invented another way to shift a car from neutral to drive to reverse. It looks like a regular shifter that you would grab and actually, pull into gear. So you get it, it looks nice, but it's actually it reminds me of the Prius, the earlier Prius shifters where you slide it over and you click it and it just drives back to where it was. So like reverse is forward, drive is back. It's intuitive once you get the hang of it, but it's just another shifter. Why can't they just leave this stuff alone? I'd like that more over a push button. I don't care for the push buttons. This, at least, it's big enough I can grab it without looking at it, and I know where to go with it. It took a little bit of time to figure that out, but it's just amazing. Like to Jen's point, they just keep inventing ways to put the car into drive and reverse.
I kept putting it in neutral instead of drive. Like when you're in reverse, because you have to slide over and then back, but to get into neutral, you just pull it. So, which is your intuitive and natural way of moving it. So I literally every time just put it in neutral.
I said, look, it was like it's short. And yes, you can grab it. But to me, it was like a little elf-sized manual. Like it has these little throws.
Well, the travel's very short.
Yes, it's very
yeah,
short.
It's very.
And it's monostable, so it comes back to center. But I said, oh, this is a little elf-like shifter that I go to drive. And I absolutely got it in the wrong gear twice. Was in reverse when I wanted to be in drive and was in neutral when I wanted to be in drive. So it definitely takes some getting used to. And I don't want to say, I was so pleasantly surprised by the interior in general. I am reading what we wrote, that every facet inside that car, the outside doesn't look much different, but every facet of that inside is better. It feels more roomy to me. And I got to be honest, I wasn't an NX fan. I could be an NX fan now. The interior felt a little more roomy. The fit and finish, admittedly, these were rented, top of the line. We actually had an F Sport on the turbocharged version, which is their kind of sportier version. Beautiful fit and finish. They're stitched, two-tone interior trim. And I was so pleased with the 10-inch screen, but the operation of it as well. I just thought it worked so well, forgetting that they were getting away from the horrible touchpad, but just so much nicer. I found them to have different character, though. I did feel like that F Sport was sporty, plenty of power, a little firmer riding. I don't know if there's a tire difference on that F Sport. The plug-in hybrid, as you would expect, a very quiet, smooth power delivery. Both powerful, but very different character. I would drive both if you're considering both. But yes, I was pleasantly surprised. Couple other things I wanted to add was that they've upped the game on the safety front. Where it was Safety Sense or Lexus Safety System 2.0, it's now 3.0. So the things we want, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, but like safe exit assist. So that if there's a bicyclist, which bicycling's on the rise, you don't want to open the door and door them, as we've talked about. So it has that. Additional pedestrian protections and bicyclist protections for people outside of the car. So some benefits there. And I was also really pleased to see that this is what they're saying, the first in a series of 20 all new or updated Lexus vehicles. So perhaps these control changes and the really nice interiors are something we're going to see throughout the line of Lexus vehicles, which, to your point, Alex, all had that touchpad. So stiff competition with X3 and GV70 and Volvo XC60 in there, but I was very pleasantly surprised and delighted, I guess, with the new NX. So, of course, we will be getting our own and testing that, but certainly something to look at and keep our eye on for not just the NX, but the Lexus line in general, I think. So before we move on to your questions, I just want to take a moment to remind you about our Talking Cars donation program. Reminder that everything CR does is done with donations and membership, including the show, including all our testing and product purchases. If you can make any donation, go to cr.org/givetalkingcars, and any little bit helps, and we thank you as always. Now moving on to your questions. Again, love them. talkingcars@icloud.com. Videos, email, whatever mechanism you need to get your questions to us, please do that. Our first question is from a tried and true fan, Ken. We thank you. Ken is from Irvine, California, and he has this question.
We've been having a pretty bad wildfire season out here in the West, but once in a while I'll read a report that says a wildfire was triggered by a motor vehicle which ejected some burning debris. I wonder if you've got some tips on how, as a motor vehicle operator, I can minimize the probability that my car is going to be the trigger for a wildfire. Thanks, and keep on talking cars.
Alex, we're going to go to you. Does Ken have a concern here?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I think, can benefit people out west, but anywhere. This is great information to have, I think. So the first thing that came to mind, I think, when we were talking ahead of time is Anybody who might smoke in a car and throw a cigarette butt out their window, that's something that's commonly done. So that was what first came to our minds. And of course, that's super dangerous and nobody should really be doing that. But beyond that, and I think more in what Ken is hearing about and probably talking about is how a car, an internal combustion car specifically that gets very hot can potentially cause this wildfire issue. So the exhaust components on your car, especially the catalytic converter, which hangs low beneath the car, under full operating temperature can get extremely hot. So catalytic converter doesn't actually start working properly until like 570 degrees. And they can have operating temperatures up to 1400 degrees. So it's a wide span, but it can get extremely hot. And I was able to find that dry leaves and grass on average can ignite if the contact time is long enough at only 500 degrees. So in theory, and there's actually an SAE study and paper on this, if you have this dry material touching your hot exhaust system for enough time, especially on one of these systems that run on the hotter end of that spectrum, totally feasible to start a fire based on that. So, especially if a car is low to the ground, maybe parking over a field, really the best thing you can do, Ken, is just making sure that when you park your car, it's clear of any, debris or anything like that might be under the car. And I actually went into some owner's manuals because I've seen this before. And so I just checked some of our more recent cars that we've had, and I happen to have the BMW X7 and Cadillac Escalade owner's manuals just already downloaded. So I opened them up, and sure enough, both of them, two completely different automakers, they both have sections in there that warn you about parking over dry leaves and these sorts of things. So it's definitely a real concern. So that's a great question.
Yeah, I think of the occasion when you might even just pull over to take a picture. Say you've been climbing and that cat's super hot and you pull over just to take a vista and you don't realize that the grass is high and dry. And it's very scary. Excellent question, Ken. And I don't think people realize that grass combustion can happen. So good to know. Our next question comes from Tyler in Cleveland, Ohio. And he writes, is it an issue if I go from my car resting all day to merging on a highway doing 65 miles per hour within roughly a minute, therefore not allowing the engine to warm up? I don't want to wait around at the office as my car is warming up. I just want to get in and go. Does weather have an effect on this issue as well, especially in winter as my car sits outside at my job? And if it ultimately is recommended I do let the engine warm up, how long should I give it? Ryan, what have you got for Tyler?
Yeah, so a couple of things. There's a difference, a bit of a difference between a warm engine and a fully lubricated engine. So your car sits there all day long. It is cold. All the oil has drained down to the oil pan at the bottom. Gravity has done its job. It's at the bottom. It's cold. When you start it, the worst thing you can do for a car is an old saying. The worst thing you can do for an engine is start it, right? Because for a split second, on older engines, it was longer, but modern technologies changed that. For a split second, the engine's somewhat dry. All the parts in the engine don't have any oil. They have a little bit maybe, but they're not fully lubricated, because what happens when you start an engine, the oil pump kicks on, starts sucking the oil to the top of the motor, and then all that oil is getting pumped through all the moving components, lubricating them, which is why our cars hopefully last 200,000-300,000 miles, right? Modern cars, modern oil, the technology is quite impressive now. So you start a car within 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you're fully lubricated. You're not warm, but you're fully lubricated. It's okay to drive right then and there. I wouldn't go starting the engine and revving it to the floor, right? You give it a second, let the oil get around, but this is all reasonable because you usually get in, you're putting your seatbelt on, you start it, you get it situated. So there's 20 seconds right there. Now, in the middle of the winter when it's really cold, I would give the car maybe give it a minute, okay? Let it just get a little bit. The fastest way for the engine to actually warm up is by driving it, actually, because it's exerting more energy, it's moving. Just letting it idle for 20 minutes really isn't going to help you. You're better off starting it, give it a minute maybe, and then you can take off. So in his case, which is, he said he's going to be doing 65 miles an hour within a minute, I would maybe give it a extra 30 seconds or a minute, but you're really not overly damaging it. In a modern car, older engines don't have the technology. They use more simple oil technologies and stuff. So there's a difference there, but these modern oils and stuff are pretty impressive. So you're fully lubricated and you're pretty safe within, I would say, 20, 30 seconds. So.
Yeah, and even on the comfort level, you alluded to it, right? It's going to warm up more quickly driving it than it is sitting there. Not to mention the environmental effects of letting it sit for 10, 15 minutes idling. Just get in and go.
Right. And don't get me wrong. I mean, it is good for the engine to be warm before you go revving it to red line or anything, which most people don't do. But if you're, merging onto a highway, you are revving it up more. I mean, you're stepping on it a bit. So it is good for, to have it a little warm maybe. But as far as the damage, you're not damaging it overly because you are lubricated pretty quickly. So
by the time you load your playlist, it's probably ready to go. Our next question comes from Donald in Los Angeles, California. I've recently purchased a 2006 Subaru Forester XT that has quite a bit of rust on the underside that was unfortunately not disclosed during the negotiation process. The rust seems to be around the rear differential crossmember and along the side rails of the frame where you would jack up the car. Is it worth the hassle of having the rust removed, or should I just count this as a loss? Or is there anything I can do to salvage this purchase? Alex, good question from Donald.
Yeah, great question. And when I first read it, since growing up in the Northeast and obviously living here now, my first thought was, oh, this car's gone. It's rusted out. And thankfully, Ryan kind of talked me down a little bit and pointed out that there is a notable difference between surface rust and rot. Those are two, both are rust, but they're different levels of severity and you would handle them differently. So seeing as that you're in California, I suspect, and I don't want to assume, but that this is probably just surface rust on the surfaces of the metal, and therefore it's, really not that big a deal. It might look scary, especially in California, if you're not used to seeing any rust at all, which I'm very jealous of. But yeah, so any surface rust on some metal components, it might look scary, but if it is just surface, then I would say you're best to just honestly leave it alone, because being in California, it's not likely to get any worse, and it's not causing you any problems right now. And to have somebody go in there and try to remove it all, it's kind of, I don't want to say a lost cause, but it's a tricky thing to do, because you can see some of the rust, but what you're not seeing is what's really tricky, and you're not going to be able to get it. So you're better off, if it's surface rust, just let it be, drive the car, and I would definitely not consider it a loss. Now, on the other hand, if it is in fact rot, which is where I went to initially, that's a different situation. If you're looking at these surfaces of the car and it's flaky metal and you could actually like maybe poke a screwdriver or your finger through it, that's totally different. Then you're starting to get into a unsafe situation, especially if it's the cross-member differential and side rails of the car. Those are structural areas. So if it's actually rotting away where metal is falling off, then I would say same thing. There's not much you can do, especially on a modern car. Patching panels and stuff isn't really recommended. So I would take it to a mechanic that can give you an honest evaluation and see where it's at as far as the severity.
Yeah, so big difference between surface and true corrosion of the iron underneath. It did strike me though, and Donald, hindsight's 2020, but how important a thorough when you're looking at a used vehicle, to get underneath there, or do, as we've always said, have a mechanic put it on a lift if that's even an option, and see what's going on. And again, you often don't think it looks so great above the ground, but you don't think to sometimes get under and look underneath it as well. So excellent question, Donald. Mm-hmm. The last question comes from Steve in Portland, Maine. I have a 2017 Honda Ridgeline RTLE, and I have been very happy with. However, while its LED low beams work well for me, they tend to flash oncoming drivers if I have even a small load in the bed. I had the headlamp aim checked by the dealer, but if this problem happens as a part of truck's normal use, why isn't there an automatic or manual method of adjusting headlamp aim to accommodate this? I had this feature in a Land Rover over 20 years ago. Is there no U.S. regulation that covers this? So, great question, Steve. I also love the Ridgeline. But again, we've talked about this. This LED brightness combined with that very sharp cutoff, which is that transition between light and darkness at the top of that low beam pattern, which is part of this visual optical alignment that we have now. That's how you align to that line. That's how we align before we test. Creates this sensation of being flashed by low beams or thinking it's high beams, even if you're not. You're taking that ridgeline and loading it ever so slightly. It's so sensitive. We've had vehicles that we adjust, the alignment just an inch, and all of a sudden people come in and say, I'm getting flashed everywhere I go. As LEDs become more prolific in the market, that differential when comparing them to halogens is a little bit less, but it happens oncoming glare and followed glare. It can happen to people in their rearview mirrors with somebody behind them. It's been exacerbated by more people buying higher vehicles, more pickups, more SUVs. My husband in that F-150, if we go somewhere where we're taking two cars, I make sure I'm behind him because I don't want those. And he doesn't even have LEDs. I just don't want them in my rearview mirror the whole time. So you are correct. Some vehicles do have this, particularly European vehicles, where you can adjust that aim down. Higher end vehicles have even dynamic leveling. They sense the load and adjust the low beam down. It's a hard balance because I wouldn't want you to adjust it so low that you're hurting your own forward visibility, but I certainly get the sensitivity. One piece of advice, and it doesn't make it easier for you, Steve, is when you are loading your bed, if you push that load more towards the cab, it may not lower that suspension quite as much, where you're getting that tilt up and people are flashing at you. But no regulation yet requiring dynamic leveling. And just so you're clear, the data, when NHTSA makes a change, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration makes a change to a standard, that has to be driven by real safety benefits that they're asking for. There has not been a real safety risk associated with glare. Discomfort, yes. Crashes, no. And injury or fatalities associated with glare. So again, we always say, not for you, but for the people coming to you, look away, look to the right side against that white line if you're encountering this as somebody who's got somebody coming towards them as well. So excellent question. Again, a bit of growing pains with this LED and visual optical alignment cutoff. That will do it for this episode. As always, keep your questions coming, talkingcars@icloud.com. Hopefully everybody's staying safe, enjoying the fall season, and happy Halloween.